Banquo is usually treated like the decent bystander. That is too weak. He survives longer than Macbeth because he refuses the mental trap that destroys Macbeth almost at once.
Yes. The point is not that Banquo never hears temptation. He does. The point is that he does not convert a prophecy into a plan. Macbeth does that almost immediately, and that is where the rot starts.
So this is not saint versus sinner. It is two men hearing the same thing and thinking in completely different ways.
Exactly. The witches speak to both of them. Macbeth latches onto kingship at once. Banquo steps back and questions the source. He warns that the instruments of darkness tell small truths to win us into deeper harm. That is not passivity. That is judgment.
And that line matters because it kills the lazy reading that Banquo is just slower. He is not slower. He is resisting the whole logic.
Right. Macbeth hears possibility and starts feeding it with imagination. Before Duncan is even dead, Macbeth is already mentally staging the murder. He sees the crown, then fills in the blood. Banquo does the opposite. He hears the promise and puts a lock on his mind.
That contrast is brutal. Macbeth turns language into action through fantasy. Banquo refuses to let fantasy run command.
Look at the first aftermath. Ross arrives and confirms part of the witch's prophecy. Macbeth is now Thane of Cawdor. That should make Banquo just as vulnerable. The supernatural prediction has landed. But Banquo does not say, "Good, now how do I force the rest?" Macbeth's mind races straight to murder.
And that is the real divide. Not belief versus disbelief. Both men now have reason to think the witches may be right. The question is what they do with that reason.
Yes. And Macbeth does something fatal. He treats the prophecy as a demand. He acts as if being told a future means he must manufacture it. Banquo does not. He can live with uncertainty.
That matters because Macbeth's collapse starts in thought before it starts in action. The murder begins in the imagination.
And Shakespeare makes that plain. Macbeth hallucinates consequences before he commits the crime. He argues with himself, pictures the dagger, imagines what must follow. Banquo does not build that internal machine. He keeps a moral stop in place.
People hear moral restraint and think weakness, softness, hesitation. But in this play, restraint is harder than appetite.
Much harder. Banquo has reasons to be tempted. The witches promise that his descendants will be kings. He knows Macbeth has gained exactly what was predicted. He even says he dreamed of the weird sisters. So the idea is alive in him. But he does not let desire recruit his will.
And that makes him stronger than Macbeth at the crucial point. Macbeth cannot stop once the image gets into his head. Banquo can.
Yes, Banquo's strength is active self-command. When Macbeth probes him before the banquet and hints at future advantage, Banquo answers carefully. He will keep his allegiance clear, and he will not lose his honor. That is not a timid lying.
A boundary Macbeth cannot stand, because Macbeth now lives by a different rule. If something blocks power, remove it.
Exactly. Once Macbeth has accepted his own logic, everyone becomes a threat. Duncan has to die to gain the crown. Banquo has to die because the prophecy about Banquo's line still stands. Macduff's family has to die because fear now governs the throne. Macbeth keeps solving problems he created by thinking like this.
So, Banquo survives longer morally because he never enters that chain. He hears the same spark and refuses to build the fire.
That is the thesis in one sentence. Banquo is not morally clean because he lives in a cleaner world. He lives in the same world of ambition, prophecy, and violence. He just refuses the next step. And in Macbeth, the next step is everything.
There is also a strategic point here. Macbeth thinks action makes him powerful, but his version of action makes him easier to control, because now he is driven by fear and prediction.
Yes. Macbeth thinks he is seizing fate, but he becomes reactive. He kills Duncan to secure the future, then kills Banquo because the future still scares him, then returns to the witches because he needs more certainty. He becomes dependent on the very logic that trapped him.
Banquo, by contrast, keeps agency by refusing to be pushed around by prophecy.
Right. Banquo does not surrender judgment to a prediction. He does not say, if this might happen, I must do whatever it takes. He keeps moral and mental independence. That is why calling him passive misses the point. Passive people drift. Banquo chooses not to drift where Macbeth rushes.
And that refusal has a cost. He is dangerous precisely because he will not join Macbeth's method.
Yes, Macbeth needs accomplices or victims. Banquo will be neither. That is why Banquo has to be removed. His existence exposes Macbeth's lie that ambition leaves no choice. Banquo is the proof that there was another choice all along.
That is the real correction. Banquo is not interesting because he fathers a royal line. He is interesting because he shows what Macbeth could have done and did not do.
Exactly. He hears the prophecy, suspects the source, feels the pull, and still refuses to turn desire into deed. That is not inactivity. That is moral strength under pressure.
So if you reduce Banquo to Macbeth's quieter friend, you miss the point. He is the play's live counterexample.
And that is why he survives longer than Macbeth, in the only way that matters first. Macbeth loses himself before anyone kills him. Banquo does not. Macbeth acts on prophecy. Banquo judges it. That is the difference between ambition and ruin.